China. Its rapid rise may be the most influential development in the last 2 decades. With seemingly unfettered economic growth and a burgeoning population, China's influence on the rest of the world seems to grow by the day. Not only has it been able to lift millions out of poverty, but it's forged a new middle class which promises to keep the country racing into the 21st century. China holds more than $1 trillion in U.S. debt. It is expanding its military power and manufacturing base, and its diplomatic influence in the world continues to grow. This is the story of China and the new global reality. It's an exploration of a nation that is challenging the global system as we know it. To learn more, we spoke with a variety of experts about China's rise. We met The Atlantic's James Fallows in his Beijing apartment to discuss China's evolving role in the world and what Americans might be able to expect from this new development.
The average American absolutely should not be afraid of China. But the average American and the average person in the world absolutely should take China seriously. Recognize this is going to be a big part of America's life and the world's life forever. It is a quarter of all humanity. It's an increasing share of production. It's where the big decisions about the planet's environmental future will be made. It's an important place that we have to pay attention to, but paying attention doesn't mean running in terror.
At a press conference at the White House in Washington, Chinese President Hu Jintao expressed unfaltering faith in his country's continued growth.
Chinese are industrious, courageous, honest, and intelligent. They are firmly committed to the path of peaceful development and are making continuous progress in the modernization drive by carrying out the Reform and Opening Up program.
Yet we are reminded how recently the shift toward this new optimistic China occurred. Many Chinese still remember a much different time. Yan Jin, former correspondent for The Economist, explains.
You can imagine 3 decades ago, China was so poor. We just like, I went to North Korea. We just like North Korea today. And you compare nowadays China, you compare China with the States.
China is perhaps where the United States was in the early 1900s in the midst of the Industrial Revolution. But the difference in China is that they're playing catch up at this point, and so everything that they've been able to learn from the West, they're applying now at like 3 times the speed.
That was Amy Swan, a Reuters Foundation fellow speaking from Beijing. Swan was one of a cohort of U.S. journalists exploring China's rise during a November 2008 journalism workshop in Beijing. Guy Nelson, another Reuters Foundation fellow and editor at KUOW Public Radio, shared his reactions to recent changes in China.
The public infrastructure is amazing. The brand new subways are some of the newest, most modern in the world. The roadways have been cleared. Old neighborhoods and old roads have been torn down and rebuilt.
China is no longer a mere manufacturing center. The Chinese government is dedicated to developing a robust scientific and high-tech knowledge economy. It's laying the groundwork for its own Silicon Valley in cities like this one, Tianjin.
In July 2006, the State Council officially defined the status of Tianjin as an international port city and the economic center of North China. Tianjin will become an eco-city with a prosperous economy, advanced scientific and educational facilities, modern infrastructure, and beautiful environment.
The leaders of Tianjin have a vision which they've laid out in these incredibly detailed models of where the city is now and which parts of the city are going to be developed and how the port is going to grow into one of the world's largest, and all of these things linked by transportation and rail and roadways and planned communities and importing, exporting, free trade zones are all part of this vision. The thing that is amazing, first of all, is that they have come up with this vision. The government does it, and unlike in a lot of other countries, the government doesn't have a lot of opposition to its vision. So when it wants to do something, it can.
As China develops places like Tianjin, many Americans fear it will surpass the United States in key high-tech sectors. Laura Conaway of National Public Radio's Planet Money expressed some of these concerns while touring Tianjin.
First thing that really strikes me about China overall is the vastness of its vastness. And they try to prepare you for that before you come here, but it's hard until you actually see it to get it. I tried to ask one of our Chinese official who was taking us around Tianjin. I walked out and I said, well, I'll ask you the question that I hear from my listeners and that I can very much viscerally relate to, which is we're scared. You know, we see this huge Chinese port that you guys are talking about building in the next 10 years, and we look at our own cities and say it's very hard to build a house. And we look at you and you're just, because, you know, you have a centralized government and all this, you know, money at your disposal, you build this enormous thing. It's frightening to us. And he really couldn't relate to that question at all.
I think there is an unconscious desire on many Americans' part to have a simple, clear way to think of China. You know, China is bad or China is good. China is bad because it's a dictatorship, because they're poisoning us, et cetera, et cetera. Or it's good because they want to be like Americans and they are opening up. Both of those simplifications, like any other simple view, are wrong. China is simply too important to America in the long run to be classified, to be pigeonholed that simply.
China's rise is benefiting many Americans via an opening up of broad new commercial markets. Here in the very heartland of America, Iowa farmers are finding their products are in greater demand than ever before. China imports about 470 million bushels of soybeans each year, which has created a more than $3 billion market for U.S. growers. Kirk Leeds, CEO of the Iowa Soybean Association, explains the important role his state plays in the Chinese market.
On a global scale, it makes us clearly one of the largest producing regions in the world, in line with countries as large as Brazil and Argentina. As it relates to China, of course, Chinese leaders, government leaders, importers clearly recognize that Iowa is a very important place for soybean production.
I live on our family farm where our family settled, and it's a century farm. So that means for 100 years a Schmidt has lived there.
How many bushels do you say that is?
We generally sell most of our crops directly to either the end user or Asia